You're listening to THEME-ADDICTS, presented by UnleashStrengths.com, the only show that embraces your addiction to strengths. Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the greatest podcast on the planet Earth. That's right, folks, THEME-ADDICTS. This is episode 28 already. I cannot believe that.
Ew.
I know, it's crazy. 30 is going to be a big milestone for me, just to let you know. I'm probably gonna wear a suit and tie the day we record that audio-only podcast. My name is Andy+Sokolovich, and I'm a Gallup-certified strengths coach and the owner of a coaching practice called UnleashStrengths, nestled right here in the Midwest town of Clinton, Iowa. I am a coach for hire, working with organizations to enhance employee engagement, boost recognition, and increase overall job satisfaction. If you are interested in enlisting the skills of a strengths coach or are looking for a speaker for your next workshop, conference, seminar, wedding, bar mitzvah, consider giving me a call, 815-441-2219, or shoot me an email, Andy@UnleashStrengths.com. THEME-ADDICTS is a podcast series designed to highlight the massive impact the Clifton StrengthsFinder assessment has had on now over 12 million people. I feel like Dr. Evil when I say 12 million people. It's our belief that the best way to promote its effectiveness and proven results is to interview those who've experienced the power of strengths-based development firsthand. Our guest today is intimately aware of her strengths and wants nothing more than to share her story in an effort to help people just like you, our loyal listeners, succeed. For more information or to schedule an interview for yourself, that's right, you too can be on this show. Give us a ring, 815-441-2219, or again, shoot me an email, Andy@UnleashStrengths.com. Hit us up on social media. That's right, we're hanging out in the cool kids table, Facebook.com/UnleashStrengths, Twitter @UnleashCSF. You can subscribe to our RSS feed via our website. Just click on that link in the top right-hand corner. Also, subscribe to this podcast on iTunes. For you iPhone, iOS folks out there, use the Podcasts app. That's right. Just go to App Store, download a podcast app, and search THEME-ADDICTS. That way you will never miss an amazing interview, and your ears will always be happy. My co-host is none other than the lovely Grace+Laconte. She is the owner of LaConte Consulting. LaConte Consulting. You can find more information about Grace at LaConteConsulting.com. That's LaConte Consulting.com. Grace provides strengths-based training to management teams and groups. Grace, what's up with you? You've had a crazy morning.
Yeah, crazy morning. We've been trying to buy a house, and the loan agent has been kind of difficult. So this morning I asked my children if they could please, when they're adults, treat others with respect and help people through problems that they have rather than making it harder to do something that should happen anyway. And they all agreed. They're like, of course, Mommy. Why would you not want to help people? So I've already got hopefully some seeds planted for them to be more aware of the relationship building needs that they do not have naturally.
Yeah.
We're trying to work on empathy in this house.
Well,
none of us feel bad for each other when we get hurt. So.
Yeah. You've been struggling to buy a house. I spilled my coffee this morning, so I don't want to hear you crying about your house because I have real troubles here.
That is a real problem.
The struggle is real. All right, enough joking. Let's get down to business. Let's talk strengths. We have an amazing guest today. She's been featured in Gallup's Call to Coach, their webcast. Also, a huge presence in social media, and she's there in the chat room at all the Gallup webcasts. And I think I know I'm so excited to have her on the show today. Yay. Maureen Monte. How are you doing, Maureen?
Hi, Andy. Hi, Grace. Gosh, I'm doing great, and it's wonderful to be here. And I remember the first time I saw you in the chat area of one of the Gallup webinar offerings. And so it's just, I feel like I've known you for a while. Yeah. I've listened to a couple of these. You guys are awesome, and I couldn't be more honored to be here.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you. Andy is a legend, isn't he?
Andy is. He is, and I am so impressed with your radio voice.
Yeah. You can imagine when my wife and I have disagreements and I turn on that voice. She's like, would you
Coming soon to a theater near you.
Turn off your podcast voice, Andy, and take this seriously. I'm like, sorry. So, Maureen, please do us a favor. Introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about where you're from, what you're doing in life, and go ahead and reveal your top 5 themes.
Awesome. Well, thanks. I can do that. I'm physically, my headquarters, how's that, is located in lovely downtown Berkeley, Michigan, which is a suburb of Detroit. And as I was explaining to you a little bit earlier, M&M made 8 Mile famous, and 8 Mile is kind of the perimeter of Detroit, and I live just north of 12 Mile. So in theory, I'm like 4 miles from the city of Detroit, but downtown's about 20 miles away.
So, Maureen, I don't want to cut you off, but do you participate in rap battles?
I do not. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Rap battling is not one of my strengths. I assure you.
You could add it to your repertoire, though.
I am sure I would not be welcome. I don't understand rap. So, if you have to stay there and go, I don't get this, I don't think I would be welcome very much. But I do like, I was just listening to Prince's Purple Rain. How great is that song?
Yeah.
He's amazing.
Purple Rain. Yeah.
Yes.
That's nice.
So, I do have my favorites. It just doesn't involve rap. At this point, it could change. I'd be the 12-mile rapper.
I lived in Minnesota. I lived in Minnesota for a year, and I can understand the love for Prince. That he is a legend there as well.
Yeah.
Amazing.
God, talk about great things coming in small packages. He's this tiny little guy, and he's just awesome. His lyrics, his voice.
He has some amazing talents that he's been able to share with the world. And that's what we want to talk about with you too. What are your talents?
How do we get onto so my top 5, actually I own 6 because 2 times I've taken Strength Finder 2.0, only 1 strength changed, but I own them both. So number 1 is ideation. I'm an idea machine. Number 2 is strategic. Number 3 is learner. Number 4 is achiever. Number 5 is individualization. And then when I took it the second time, I lost individualization and gained maximizer. So I'm one of those people that you love working with, Grace. Maximizer.
We were just talking before the show about how the maximizer strength is fantastic, but because I have certain strengths that I form ideas, I see future possibilities, and I want to move toward those with my goal setting, a maximizer comes in and can be like, well, it could be better. It could be more. Well, have you thought about this? And it throws a wrench in my plans. So it's kind of hard to accept help from maximizers when I'm in the middle of still creating the problem, the solution to the problem. But
a well-regulated maximizer, I
appreciate it. Yeah.
Exactly. But a well-regulated maximizer would say, would you like feedback?
Exactly. Ask before you offer. That's great. Yeah.
We need a maximizer empathy we need that.
You won't get empathy out of me either. Feel the thing.
That's great though. So Maureen, you have a lot of strategic thinking strengths.
Yeah, and in fact in my top, what I've come to learn, one of the things that's been big for me to learn, because I always thought I was antisocial, right? Mm-hmm. Everybody wants to, they're like, oh, I've got a friend for you to meet. I'm like, I don't want another friend. Thank you very much. But 6 of my top 10 or 12 are thinking strengths. So I am happiest when I've had time to think. In fact, I will say, check a box every day. Did you have time to think? And alternatively, I will say, did you spend time socially? Because otherwise I can become a little bit antisocial. Oh. So I help myself have a kind of a holistic view of wellness. And that those are 2 of the things I measure. But I do measure alone time. Need it. Big time. Mm-hmm. So.
Yeah, I agree with that. I'm an introvert at heart. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Very outgoing, very people-oriented introvert. And it confuses people sometimes, like Andy. What are you talking about? You love people. But it that's an external. And I mean, it comes up on the Myers-Briggs for me. I'm an I. But on the Strengths Finder, it actually helps explain I have to have time to think and process and dream. And I have ideation and input in my top 10 or top 5, excuse me. So ideation for me is that way of coming up with ideas, whether or not it's with other people.
Right.
And I guess, Maureen, for you, maybe you kind of have a split too. You want to be with people, but you have to have time alone to consider the possibilities first, right?
Absolutely. And honoring that need, both for yourself, but asking others to honor that as well. And in fact, I've done some work with it's a leadership team of medical doctors who are merging 3 health systems. So they have a big responsibility, but they're doctors first. And one of the main things that's been fun to work with on them is to help them understand that while they must execute and they must influence others and they must build relationships to be successful, they're all this big herd of thinkers first. They're scientists. Scientists think, then they do, right? So if we can help thinkers like us, honor our own strengths, honor those thinkers around us, and then support them in that thinking, the world would be a better place. That's my theory of the universe for today.
Yeah, that's well said. Well, and I'm liking where this interview is going, because normally we start out with, tell us your strengths journey, tell us your strengths story. And I think if people want to know more about that, especially with Maureen, that, your Gallup webcast covered all of that. But I'm really picking up on, you're just providing us some solid insights. And what this show is all about is it's focused on that individual who hits the Control P on their keyboard, they get their Theme Insights report, And now they're saying, what do I do? Where do I go with this? This is great. This is great. You provided me with a conduit to receive this information, but now how do I apply it? And if that question was posed to you, Maureen, maybe you can give us some steps or some actionable items that they can take to make sure that they're actually going from the whole name, claim, aim, and what's the aim part look like?
That's such an important part of the journey. And in fact, personally, I think for me, both with individuals and teams that I work with, and part of it is some of them are executives and they're very busy. I got to get to the aim pretty darn fast. Okay. And I don't have a problem with that because I'm kind of activators number 6 for me or something like that. So, the thing I like to do is say, listen, my platform is not strength-based. It begins with strengths. My platform is to help you build your platform. And you can't do that. You cannot build your own platform, whether it's a team or an individual, unless you know who you are. And so what does success look like is always, for me, the first question. There's no point in taking the Strength Finder, and you know how much I love the Strength Finder, and then go, what now? The question is why? Why are we doing this? What does it look like? What does success feel like, smell like? Tell me. And then we from that moment on, once we've got a good agreement on that, we use the Strength Finder to build their platform to achieve that success. So it's not quite the second step. It's the first step of the journey to know your strengths, but only when we've had a conversation about why are we doing this. So in the case of the hospital group I'm working with, 3 different hospitals, each think they do it the very best. And we do not have the luxury of fiddling around or arguing about which one of these is the best way to do it. We have to figure it out very quickly. We have to do it as a collaborative team and move on. And so that's kind of my view of the name, claim, and aim. I like to start with aim so that we can use that to support the understanding of part of the journey.
I like that. I think a lot of that comes from your individualization too, that you're looking at how individual people can be formed within a group before you start to take some further action, right?
That is a great observation.
That at the beginning, and the maximizer too.
No, you're right.
Before you go ahead and strategize the plan, you have to know what the purpose is, and I think that's very important too.
Exactly, and I never do, and I said this on the webinar, but this is why I never do the same thing twice. So I don't have a 3 webinars that I give, right, over and over again. I have none that I give over and over again. I have one that I build for you as the individual.
So we're lucky when we get in a webinar with you, right? Because that's the one and only time we'll hear it.
It is, actually. So
is it because you're constantly coming up with new ideas that can be applied for new situations? That's
part of it, but I think more importantly is that what success looks like for 3 hospital systems that are merging is different than what success looks like for a hockey team that I just helped win the state championship. So it can't be the same. We have different end goals in mind.
Well, I can appreciate that, Maureen. Consistency is my number 34. Yeah, same thing here. Always different, always looking to modify it somehow, but always kind of catering, because individualization is I'm whipping out my Gallup app here for all these strengths geeks that don't have the app yet. It's my number 10. So it is pretty, it's up there. It's something that I always try to create, whether it's my marketing material or it's a coaching session or it's a presentation. It's always geared towards that individual. And there's 2 very influential books in my life. Well, probably 5, but the 2 that I really want to talk about right now, Strengths Finder, obviously, but the second one is Simon Sinek, Start With Why.
Yeah.
And
that's exactly what I just kind of described.
Right. Yeah. You did. And I was actually mowing a pasture the other day. I'm sitting on the tractor, so and I have jack of all trades here. And then I'm listening to the audio version of that. And, Simon really defines the how people and the why people. Yep. And I think that just holds hands so nicely with Strengths Finder. And I put a post out on Facebook the other day saying, I'm a why guy looking for some hows. Because if we can partner up, that's the relationship. Like Simon Sinek says in his book, you're Steve Wozniak versus your Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs is your why guy. Steve Wozniak was your how guy. They worked so well together to create something so amazing and leave an amazing legacy behind. So I really like that you brought that up.
Yeah, now, I couldn't agree more. And I think what many companies would do is say, well, let me help. You're a why guy. Wouldn't you be so much more effective if you also became a how guy? When,
Right. Maximize that person into doing both.
But they can't necessarily. If they can, great. But most people can't, right?
A better solution would be to partner them with someone that is already adept at doing the how, right?
Maximum at the ones they're good at, the how or the why, right? And then put them together.
Yeah.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
I love your approach, Maureen.
I do too. I feel like I should be paying you for this. I think I said that the last couple interviews.
Andy, I'm going to stop you from paying people, okay? You need to accept this gift that Marie's giving us and enjoy the ride.
Well, I pay in hugs.
Oh, gosh. I can't wait for that. Thanks, Andy.
But this is great because you are right. Most corporations say, you got the why, now come up with the how. Or they let you just flounder on the beach of the why and kick and scream and suffocate yourself because you can't figure out the how, and your idea just falls by the wayside and never comes to fruition.
That happens to a lot of strategic thinking strengths people.
Yeah. So let's change the subject here. So how does a why guy find that group of hows?
Well, per your post, you asked, right? You asked for people to do it. I think the other thing is that and this is again, one of the things I try to help people do is, what's your role on the team? So if you're a how guy, then first of all, it has to come naturally. But if you're a why guy, then we all agree that you're the why guy and that Joe's over here or Mary over here is the how person. But that should kind of come out in the way they behave. There isn't, and what they love to do. I don't think there's one strength where you can go, well, that's a how why and that's a why guy. But their blend can, with what they know, and because sometimes skills can come into that as well, right? I had a boss who was a fabulous Excel spreadsheet guy. I used to say, you're not a human being, you're an Excel spreadsheet, Ed. And he was wonderful. His whole world, I said, when he put his food on a plate, I'm like, are those in, rows and columns? And so he was a how guy, right? Not the why guy, but the how guy. His version of how would be different than somebody else who might be a how. But they need to recognize that. And again, it's understanding what you do well and how that manifests itself in the workplace and in the role or team you're on.
Maureen, would you just define really quickly what you mean by a why person and a how person?
I think I'd have to say overall, I think that a why guy would be more of a thinker person. What if, why? The how guy, I think, tends to be more of the other three combined, potentially, right?
You mean the other three domains of leadership?
Yeah, the other three domains. So you've got the strategic thinking, and then imagine a how guy that can say, oh, I've got woo. I'm going to go talk to the president of the company and convince him that this is the kind of thing we could do, right? This is how we would do it. Now, I think that, again, an end destination has to happen before that can work. But I think overall, the why people to me are the people that are thinkers that have asked questions about it, right? The how people tend to be execution focused. I see how this can happen. It might be deliberative. It might be through some sort of a restorative thing, for example, restoring problems. And then I see influencers, of course, making it happen, but relationship building can be part of that as well. I know connectedness. I know Joe in company ABC has done this before. Let's go talk to Joe.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's just like my top 5 strategic, futuristic woo: ideation and communication. I mean, I live in that why zone. I mean, I'm thinking, I'm developing a strategy, I'm thinking about the future, but then sometimes what I do is I skip hows to the CEO. I have a brilliant idea, and he says, how's that going to happen? I go, I don't know. He's like, next time before you come in the office, get the how part figured out, and then you have, your full plan. Yeah. Right now, you just got a dream, dude. And I'm like, oh yeah, you're right. So I get so motivated and so passionate about the idea.
Yes.
That I don't actually try to connect. So this year I've been making more of an aggressive attempt to find those individuals who know how. And Grace and I just had a conversation about, business development and outsourcing last night. And I think that really has led to some serious growth within my business now that I've been able to form those strategic partnerships.
Good.
It takes a really, a lot of effort to take your top strengths. I'm talking to all of our listeners out there. If you know what your top strengths are, and you've been working toward how to develop those, it's almost like if you want to mature in that knowledge, you then have to realize that there are others that you need to surround yourself with to help you mature even more in your growth and in your understanding of others. I mean, we are not islands. We cross paths with lots of people, and I think it's fantastic having a why perspective, which I think anyone in any of the domains is capable of having this point of view too, by the way. I mean, sometimes it takes some more effort, but just because you have strategic thinking strengths doesn't really mean that you have to think of the why all the time either. I mean, I know some people that never question that. They just go to work on their ideas. You know, they just kind of work in the moment kind of thing. And the how too. I mean, I'm sure some people with strategic strengths probably have the determination to actually put that into action, like Andy. You're very much a how person as well, and you put your ideas into action. So I guess I'm saying there's really no excuse for saying, well, I'm this kind of person, so that means I can't, blah blah blah. There's definitely a purpose for finding others that can help you in the journey, and then recognizing what you're not so good at, so that you can let others help you. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, collaboration. I mean,
collaborate.
Yeah.
Yes.
Did you guys read the blog that they just posted? It was Kurt Liesfeld's last writing.
Oh.
I have not. I've actually have it. I've printed it out, but I haven't had a chance to read it yet.
Can you summarize it for us?
Yeah, but you guys are making the point, and I'm only going to share his way of describing it because he was basically the master communicator about strengths in terms of using phrases that I think were fabulous. He called it the law of supply and rely. Provide what you're great at and rely on those others for those things that you're not great at.
I love that.
So supply what you're great at and don't feel either like you're better or worse than someone else. It's actually a blog about humility, and or rely on those, and then rely on those that do what you don't do. So the law of supply and rely. I think it's a pretty cool phrase, and it should catch on.
So Kurt was a huge force in the Gallup community, and he passed away suddenly, a couple weeks ago, right? Well, I'm sorry. For when our listeners are listening, he passed away, I guess in June, right?
Mid-May.
May, excuse me, right,
That's
May.
okay.
And he had a great impact on a lot of us, even though I never met him or spoke to him or anything. His effect has had a huge impact on a lot of us who've benefited from his point of view on strengths.
Yeah.
And I have to say, personally, not just because I'd met the man, but when I started my strengths journey 10 years ago, there was no support for somebody like me. I didn't work for a company that was using strengths, and I didn't work for Gallup. And those were really the only ways to become well-trained. So I went to 3 Gallup summits, which are places that use them, share their best practices, and I met Kurt in that way. But for me, he was, until I became certified recently, that's how I got my information and built my own platform. The good news about it was that I didn't have a lot of information, so I built my own platform. The bad news was that I'd have been even more effective had I had that information of certification prior to now, so, but he's amazing.
Never too late though. Never too late, Maureen.
Never too late. Never too late. Had a blast. Loved Kurt. He was one of my teachers, so.
That's great. And his information lives on for those of you who want to hear his, was it Theme Thursdays? Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
and a lot of other
Thursdays.
great YouTube videos. So you can find that through Gallup. Is there anywhere else that we could find videos from Kurt, Andy?
No, all Kurt's stuff is all on the Gallup's, YouTube channel, as well as if you go to a Facebook group, either Call to Coach or Gallup Strengths Finder. There's all those documents and stuff that are in the Files tab. Most of them he authored. So an amazing man. Yeah, huge loss to the movement. But you know what? The other day, somebody asked me. Actually, I think Grace, it was your dad, said if I was planning on doing anything to honor Kurt Liesfeld, and I said I'm going to coach. I'm going to spread the word. I'm going to meet. I think I said every state, country, region, hollow, nook, and cranny.
Hollow, yeah.
I'll find people who don't know about strengths because
I think that's a Pennsylvania word, by the way.
Yeah.
Hollow.
But he was.
By the way, for those of you who don't know, Andy and I are both from Pennsylvania, and we lived within miles of each other. He lived in Reading, am I right? Reading area, kind of.
Yep.
And I lived near Lancaster, Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
So we didn't know each other back then, but we have Pennsylvania roots. But yeah, I think what my dad was trying to say, he has belief as one of his top 5. So he was just echoing the strong sense in himself of wanting to connect his passion for seeing the opportunity to put people and thoughts and, people who have the same common interest in mind, and also to honor someone who has had such a tremendous impact. So yeah, a lot of us have that inner drive, and we may remember that Kurt had an effect, but it would be really nice to have like a memoriam or some sort of, statement in the purpose of what we're trying to do as a group in his memory. So I think that's what my dad was trying to say.
Yeah, absolutely.
It did have a big impact.
Yeah. So Maureen,
anyway,
let's talk a little bit about, we kind of skipped over this in the beginning, but So strengths enters your life how? I mean, how does this, I mean, I know you're using it professionally now as a coach, but how did it ever even kind of come into your wheelhouse?
It came into my wheelhouse. I've learner number 3, so I'm ready to change careers relatively frequently compared to most of the normal population. So I've got a BS and MS in mechanical engineering, and was then started my own business after being an engineer for about 10 years, and started my own business. And 10 years after that, I'm like, I'm ready for something new. And I've always been interested in kind of the strong strong leaders in movies, strong leaders in business. And so I decided to formally study leadership and business ethics out of Duquesne University, which you guys know where that is. Yeah, it's a good old Pittsburgh. And early on, I was exposed to StrengthsFinder, and it was done. I began instantly to apply it to friends, family, and then very quickly charging to coach with it, even though I hadn't formally been trained as a coach at that point, and have since built a platform, as I said, that begins with that. But for example, for me, it's very important that I share my vision, mission, and purpose statements with my clients so they understand why I'm engaging with them. When I do that, they're making my dreams come true, and my goal is to make their dreams come true.
Wow.
So that's how it began, though, 2006.
I was on your website today, MaureenMonte.com. We'll make sure we put a link to it on the post. But I see this one quote that just stands out right at the beginning of your About section, and it says, "It doesn't interest me what you do for a living. I want to know what you ache for. And if you dare to dream of meeting your heart's longing, Araya Mountain Dreamer." Explain to us a little bit about that. Why is that? Obviously, when you see quotes on somebody's website, it obviously resonated with them. What about that quote really kind of stands out for you?
So this kind of gets back to my point of what does success look like. I don't want to know your strengths for the sake of knowing your strengths, although I always find that interesting. I've got individualization. But what are you longing for? Why are we doing this? What is your best life world? What does the pinnacle of success look like for you? And that comes from within. And that's what I want to know. That's where the glory is. And I'm a partner on that journey then. Once we discover what it is, what that heart's longing is, let's go for it. I'll help you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I love that approach. I mean, I too, when I create some kind of marketing material and I send proposals to businesses, normally it has to talk about, engagement and things like that. But I love kind of getting into that more emotional side of everything. Even in marketing and sales, it's all about the emotional. It's that emotional trigger that gets pulled that causes people to buy luxury vehicles. It's that emotional trigger that causes people to buy plane tickets and fly to somewhere, tropical. I mean, it's emotion driven. Everything we do is. And Grace and I were having a conversation. It was just yesterday, the day before. I don't know. We talk too much, Grace. I'm losing track.
We talk a lot. We've got to stop this. Yeah.
But I was saying how I am really drawn to the overall core concept of strengths-based development. Mm-hmm. Like, to me, that is my passion. The fact that we learn to manage our weaknesses or areas of lesser talent and really focus on what we do well to gain success. That's the thing that gets me up at night and writing stuff down because of ideas. The 34 themes, to me, are all features of that core concept. And so I always tell people, like you kind of mentioned, I don't want to know just your top 5. I want to know you. The top 5 they're gonna lubricate the communication here. It's gonna help this process move forward. But honestly, once we learn to just manage our weaknesses, embrace our talents, and run with it, that's when real cool things start to happen. So I appreciate that. I was cruising around your website and I was reading some of the copy on there, some of the stuff you have typed in, and I think you and I share a very similar vision of what that looks like. And I'm probably going to steal that quote every once in a while as well.
Well, you can steal it because I stole it from the Orion Mountain Dreamer.
Maureen, I also really love the title that you use. You're a success architect.
Yes, I am.
And you have a mechanical engineering background, which helps you to see the world through that lens. But also, I mean, obviously success for you comes through understanding individual people and then ideating with them and strategizing how they can be more successful. Is that right?
Yeah, and teams, because the individual, I do adore that. But if we can align 30 really talented rock star hockey players behind a vision they built themselves to win the state championship, and then they go do it, that's fun.
It helps your achiever to be like, yeah, right? They did that because I helped
They
them.
did that, yes. And I was glad to be in the background because I did not score any goals.
That's wonderful. I'm so glad that you found this kind of a perfect blend, or as a previous guest on our show, he has a company called Strengths Alchemy. I love the word alchemy.
Alex Wong.
This kind of
she knows
Alex Wong. Yes, thank you, Alex. But he has a company in Singapore, I believe, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Where he blends together and creates almost like a mystical, magical, additional level that is not possible with the individual pieces. Right. So the alchemy is kind of this amazing, magical experience that can be had when everyone understands their strengths. It sounds like that's what you're doing through your team building as well.
It is, and I don't use that term, but
sure.
I can see why you would. But I agree. That is exactly what I'm trying to do. You know, my purpose is to help people and teams achieve what they're put on this earth to do. And you don't know that unless you know yourselves. Right. And then, you know, add that passion, that, and the ability. You know, I could, Shaquille O'Neal, is that his name? The big Shaquille O'Neal? Yeah. You know, if you were to say,
tall dude.
Yeah, oh my God. And big, heavy. He's not just tall and he's not thin either. And that's he's not saying he's fat, but he's a big man. And for him to say, you know, I've always dreamt of being a jockey at the Kentucky Derby, right? When the jockeys weigh about 10 pounds and are 5'1". You can't just want to do it. You have to be able to do it, right? So.
Tell me about, now you piqued my interest because I'm a huge hockey fan, a huge sports fan. Go Blackhawks, Stanley Cup champions.
Go Red Wings.
Yeah, so.
Go Devils. Come on.
Oh, get out of here.
Oh, here we go.
Sorry. I'm married into it.
Yeah, well, you're going to get booted off this podcast if you keep going. I'm just kidding.
Congrats on the Stanley Cup, by the way.
Yeah.
Congrats. That was a great series.
So tell me how you got involved with coaching a sports team. Normally when we hear teams, we think business teams.
Yeah.
Talk about a sports team. How'd you get involved in that?
So, you know, I have had the blessing of working with lots and lots of people. And one of the people who's been my client, has a twin sister. Her son was on this high school hockey team. It's a very lovely, humongously beautiful private school called Cranbrook here in Bloomfield Hills, and that's it's just a beautiful part of Michigan. And so when the team was struggling, but not losing, struggling, so the coach knew they weren't playing to their potential, but they weren't losing. He wanted them to play to their potential, and frankly, and you guys will appreciate this, he and his coaches were preaching the message of positivity and belief. And when we took the top 5 strengths of all 23 players, not a single one of them had positivity or belief in their top 5.
Wow.
18 had competition. Let me tell you, that's a lot of horsepower in the room. And command and self-assurance, there was a lot of influencing strengths on that team. And so what we did was redefine success in their words. So yeah, you want to win the state championship, but does the how matter? And this gets back to the kind of the how and why. And oh no, of course it did. And so then we created words around it that they could latch their top 5 strengths to. And then the coach, to his credit, he's an amazing coach, has individualization. Number 1, he was able to put people in roles and help them define a role on the team, even if they weren't a starter. So suddenly you've got everybody pulling, even if they're on the bench, they found a role for that person. And that's a very different dialogue than you got to believe and stay positive.
Yeah, that's interesting. I love that. My brain's spinning now. Sports teams, you know, what motivates the individual players to succeed? Right. What motivates them to that win? I mean, we watch how many dramatic movies are out there. I mean, even in StrengthsFinder, the movie Rudy is referenced in there. More so about Rudy Rudiger's size and ability to play the game, but the entire team, what motivates them to run in that touchdown, to win that championship? And like you said, it may not be positive. It may not be just the feeling of elated after you score that winning touchdown, you score that winning goal. What is it? And I think strengths, I know now because you just told me it worked, is a great way to identify those.
Exactly.
I never put 2 and 2 together before. Awesome. This is
awesome.
Great.
That was a lot of fun. And, you know, to have almost immediate gratification, they were struggling 6 weeks out, and then 6 weeks later they were state champs. So they lost one game.
Something happened there.
Yeah, and they even recognized it. The boys did. We're working on a paper, which is rapidly becoming the size of a book, as we document the journey, just because it was so so fruitful and so much fun. And not just my journey, but the coach's journey, the coach of the team, and some of the other coaches as well. So I'm documenting that as we speak.
That's cool. I mean, that's like a made for Disney type thing.
Yes.
Or made for the first Disney Gallup collaboration to produce and Maureen.
We could add some dancing from our guest from before.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
Yesterday we talked. This is how crazy this podcast goes. Yesterday we actually talked about, and for those ways is going to be released, you probably have already heard it if you're an avid listener of THEME-ADDICTS. But we talked about dancing and Jim Collison in the same sentence. So hopefully Jimbo hears that.
Jim is being called out. We
bust
need
out
Jim's
his
dancing
leotards.
So is he wearing a tutu? That's the only question I have.
Hopefully.
He can decide whatever he wants, but Andy would probably prefer a tutu, yeah.
No, we had an amazing conversation with Chinarut yesterday.
Chinarut. Yes.
Chinarut, I'm sorry. And he is a dancer, and he was talking about the idea came up about creating short dances that represent each of the 34 themes. As like an art project.
We're serious about this, Maureen.
I think it's a great idea.
I told my kids, and they're actually creating dances that they'd like to have me record and send to Chinarut.
Well,
so
there you go.
This is a real thing. We're calling all of you out there who are listening. If you want to contribute, we're going to set up a way that you can contribute and share your dance representing a strength, and just label it with the strength, and then we'll kind of see what happens from there.
I want to see
Andy, I bet you're working on something.
Yeah. No, I'm not.
Or no. Maureen, do you have any thoughts on that? What do you think about the strengths being represented by a dance?
I'm thinking that would be very interesting. And actually, one of my previous roles, in between being an engineer and what I am now, I was a professional photographer, and I shot the dancing companies that came through the city of Detroit. So the Russians, the French, and they were, of course, stunningly beautiful. And so I'm trying to contrast that with a dance that's deliberative or analytical. I think, why not? I think we can motivate others.
The cool thing is that we can each interpret what that word represents for us.
It's true.
So the array of different ways that people would show that, I think would be so interesting. But if you want to contribute, Maureen, we'd be more than happy to see what you'd come up with.
Yeah, bust a move. I'm gonna do the electric slide. That'll be my woo, maybe, or my, I don't know. I don't know which one that'll be. So, Maureen, we asked this question from all of our guests, and, sometimes we get the one theme that stands out, or there's a combination of them. But what theme in your top 5 would you say is your favorite? What's that driving force of that core theme?
I think in the role I have as a success architect, I think my ideation and strategic feed my ability to help people define and reach that special success summit that is their very own. So those two are my favorite. I'm an idea machine. It's hard to turn off the brain at night.
Oh,
yeah.
Me too.
Yeah.
We talk about that all the time.
We're always up at like crazy hours messaging each other. I can't stop my brain, so I write stuff down. Do you do that too, Maureen? Do you have notebooks or do you have your computer open?
I sometimes write it down. But if they're vivid, they stay with me and I'll noodle. And this is where they stay in my head till they're maximized and then they come out.
Yeah,
wow.
That's the same way I am. Gee, this is crazy. I don't take notes. I say this all the time. I don't take notes. I don't jot things down. Like it's got to be vivid, and it's got to be like stick worthy in order for it to hang around. And that's how I know when I can remember it 2 or 3 days later that it is probably something that I can actually develop into whatever.
There you go.
It's got possibilities. So. Wow. That's great.
I'm different. I have to write it down. And I would drive Andy crazy because he can't stand the people at conferences that are like head down, notebook, pen, crazy writing,
No,
So
I can't stand the ones that go,
I'm
I can't stand the people who, it's not that I can't stand them. I have a hard time dealing with those who go, can you go back to that slide?
Right.
And then the presenter says, the slides will be available after the presentation. Okay, but can you go back to that one? I didn't get it all. Right. I'm like, they said it would be available.
Because they need to process it at that moment, Andy. They have to get it at that moment or it'll disappear from their consciousness. Maureen, do you have an opinion on this?
Yes, I do. Well, actually, I have a question for you, if you don't mind me asking.
Yeah.
The purpose of you writing it down, is it to capture it so it's not gone? Or does the process of writing it down change it somehow in your head?
It's both. I'm a combination of the 3 types of learner. So I have to see and hear and write. And if I can't do all 3 at the same time, I actually add stimulus in. So I have to listen to music while I'm writing. I like to see things while I'm hearing them. It's crazy. It's kind of overwhelming for people to watch me work because it's a very kinesthetic, mixed up kind of process. Yeah, and then I also have to do something with it. So that's where the writing is therapeutic. I'm getting the thoughts from my brain out. So yeah, I have 3 strategic thinking strengths in my top 5, 4 in my top 10, and then 4 influencing strengths. And I'm constantly fighting between wanting to process the world and wanting to change it. It's like a battle in my brain. So one of the processes I use is to write out everything that I think about my business in the morning or the evening for 20 minutes on 3 sheets of paper. This is something that my marketing coach has suggested. She's with the DIY Marketing Center here in Vancouver, Washington. Woo! But it's just a practice that was started by an artist trainer. It's a creative brain thinking process. So you write everything out for 3 pages and then you can stop. And whatever is on those 3 pages is usually the top cream of the crop stuff that's like simmering in your mind. So that's helpful. I try to do that at least once a day, maybe every other day if I can't. And then the other thing that's very, very helpful is, believe it or not, taking a shower and then meditating. We had a guest a few weeks ago who suggested that water has a huge effect on the body and the mind. And sometimes being in water or having water on you in some way can actually affect the pathway of your brain. And I've noticed that it's weird, but when I have an idea that I can't quite get out, taking a shower or being in water, going swimming or something, gets that idea formulated, and then I can go write it down as soon as that happens. It's a very strange connection, but it does work. So I think that was Khalil Patwa that mentioned the water connection. Right, Andy?
Yeah, that's right. And,
he said it was a healing process for him to reconnect his mind and body together.
Interesting.
Because of some health issues. But anyway, yeah. But that is very helpful for me. Having this kind of split brain thing with strategizing and then wanting to get people to take action on it.
Well, I love your what I would call, it's not really a coping mechanism because you're not coping, but you're being successful with it.
Does help you stay sane.
What will happen when you add dancing to this?
Oh man, that would add a whole other layer. I tend to be
would be a lot of showers, a lot of meditating, a lot
shower, meditating, and dance, baby. Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. There's your setup.
To be honest, I think a lot of people who are in their head a lot, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this for both of you, but we are thinkers. We mull and consider and aggregate, and we just create in our heads, right? And then it's beautiful to see it created in the real world, but it isn't always possible. But dance is really, it has to be created in the moment. Even if you're strategizing how to do it, you have to practice physically to have that happen. And Maureen, you must have observed this. Dancers practice and practice and practice until they perfect the movement that others can see. Is that right? So
Absolutely.
They can practice in their mind too a bit, but really it doesn't matter until they're physically doing the work. And I think there's actually there could be a benefit for some of us who are in our heads way too much to physically work out some of this stuff.
Yeah.
Or physically do group sessions where we're actually, doing something in a physical sense instead of always being in our heads and strategizing. Do you have activities that you do with your groups where they have to actually collaborate in person and do things with their hands?
I've not added physicalness to it. I have not added something to the hands to it. But it's certainly something to consider. And I think the challenge is, and this is why, for you it might be one thing, a dancer, the reason dancers love dancing is how they feel when they're doing it. Right? And so each person's unique. One person might like to go bounce a basketball. Another, my brother has a guy on his team and he fiddles with playing cards. And all of a sudden you hear, the playing cards are being shuffled, right? And I'm like, what's going on over there? And I asked
during meetings or something? Or?
He's thinking, he's working on his work. And, and I said to my brother, why does Eric do that with the cards? He goes, I don't know. I'm like, what? It's me, it works for you. I was up there visiting. He lives in the Upper Peninsula. So I asked him, my individualization couldn't stand it, right? And he says, oh, it helps me think. I'm like, oh, that's cool. So I think it's important people know what those are. And if you are like you, need a physical component. For me, it's walking. I like to walk. I also study Tai Chi, and I meditated before I got on the show here today so that I was sharp with you people. I knew I had sharp hosts asking me very good questions.
Thank you, Maureen. Tai Chi is a fantastic practice.
It is.
It's not just for exercise. It's also, so for those of you who don't know, Tai Chi is, do you want to define it, Maureen?
It's a moving meditation. Method. It's a martial art in the sense that it is part of the exploration of the mind-body connection. And so the goal is to move as slowly as possible, and it's a breath leads the body exercise, so your breath matches what you're doing. And the goal is to get to 3 breaths a minute. So that's 10-second intake, 10-second exhale, 10-second. And that's not easy to do over a long period of time. Mm-hmm. But it slows you down. Blood pressure goes down, all that stuff.
I'm going to have to try that after the show.
A few years ago. It was very
Did you?
relaxing.
Okay, I can tell you knew something. Yeah, it is. Andy, I think you would like it. And I can see you in the fields as you're mowing. You to hop off the mower and deep into Tai Chi.
Probably
in the middle of the field with all the cows watching you.
No cows, horses, no cows out there.
Oh, that's right.
All right. This was crazy. We talked about Tai Chi, dancing, Eminem, Jim Collison dancing. So this has been a well-rounded broadcast. And I just want to thank you, Maureen, so much. Can you please tell us how, if those listening to this broadcast saying, I need to talk to her, how can they get in touch with you?
You can email me at Maureen, Maureen, that's my first name, at Maureen Monte, MONTE.com. And my phone number is 248-821-6821. And I just want to make sure I'm clear about how grateful I am to have spent time with both of you today. You're remarkable people. I hear such joy when you talk about your strengths and the strengths journey, not just for yourselves, but for everybody that you're working with. And I think it's awesome.
Well, thank you very much. And Grace and I have the opportunity to learn from every single guest, and this is not the exception. This was very, very informative and insightful for both of us. And I know that you have a beautiful personality. You're a beautiful person. And I just want to thank you so much for being a guest on this show. So, Grace, do you have any closing comments before we play that sweet outro music?
Sweet outro. Maureen, thank you so much for sharing the immense variety of how you've developed your strengths and how you use it to help others. I'm blown away by some of these examples of starting with the aim first. That was fantastic. And the idea of adding physical work into how you process the world. I think a lot of people are kind of missing out on that, or they may be doing it, but they can't explain why it helps. So that's fantastic. Thanks so much for sharing all of your ideas with us today.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
All right, everybody. That's been another episode of the one, the only, the greatest podcast in the universe now, I'm going to say. We're going past planet. That's right, folks. THEME-ADDICTS. Make sure you subscribe to this. If you use iTunes, go ahead and download it, subscribe to it, and be sure to leave us a comment as well. Those comments on iTunes really help this podcast kind of grow and surface to the top. So for those who maybe aren't familiar with THEME-ADDICTS, they can find it every time they go onto that sweet, sweet iTunes website. Facebook.com/UnleashStrengths. Twitter @UnleashCSF. I try to get in all the social media stuff before I close the show out because I often forget. All right, I'll talk to you guys soon. See ya. Thank you for listening to another episode of THEME-ADDICTS presented by UnleashStrengths.com. Remember to embrace your strengths and always stay addicted. Just because this episode is over doesn't mean you have to stop watching. Click here for more episodes of the amazing podcast, THEME-ADDICTS. And as always, stay addicted.